Hello everyone, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an easy and smart way of covering newspaper for civil service examination. We will take up discussion on today's The Hindu dated 19th April 2020. The articles we will be taking up for discussion has been tabulated here. The timestamping for the same has been provided in the description section. Because today The Hindu has special page on science and tech, our discussion today in the DNS will also be centered on science and technology. I hope you have been familiarizing yourself with different features of our e-learning platform. There's one specific thing I would like to tell you. There's a tab of mains assignment questions, and questions from current affair are being posted here. Apart from listening to DNS, what you should also try hand in hand is answer writing practice. And these are the good questions to try your hands on. So visit this tab, look at some of the questions, look at the answers, read the answers, write comments, and write some of the answers on your own and sort comment from the peers and the reviewer here. This article from page number 11 has been titled Hydroxychloroquine does not reduce viral load. Randomized trial shows. This article is about recent study conducted on randomized COVID-19 patients. The result of this study has not been peer reviewed. It has not been published in any reputed journal. But still we are going to look at the result of this study because it helps us understand basic science, which is important for the exam. There are two important results coming out of the study. One is that it does not reduce viral load. This drug, which has been in demand in recent time, India has exported it to US recently, hydroxychloroquine. It does not reduce viral load, meaning in no way it is effective in suppressing viral replication, virus multiplication inside the body. But this is not to discount the utility of the drug in treating COVID-19 patients, because it has been known for long that hydroxychloroquine is an anti-inflammatory drug, and because of its anti-inflammatory property it is very effective in case of coronavirus infection. The whole point of this discussion is to understand as to how anti-inflammatory property of this drug is going to help in treating COVID-19 patients. By now you must understand the basic of viral infection very well. You must know that there are certain proteins at the top of the outer lipid layer of the virus. And these proteins get latched up to the enzymes which are there at the outer cell wall of human cell. And they get locked up like keys and locks. And because of this locking, this is the first step in viral infection. If this locking does not happen, virus will not be able to enter inside the cell and infect the body. That is why most of the vaccine target this locking up process. And they aim to deactivate the protein at the surface of human cell wall so that this locking up does not happen and virus does not get the chance to enter into the cell. After this locking up happens, the virus enters into the cell and starts the process of replication. It releases its RNA into the nucleus and it uses the DNA of human cell to replicate, forms more RNA of its kind, more proteins that it uses, more toxin material that it requires, and make more virus and trigger the process of replication and multiplication. When that begins to happen, the cell is said to be infected. During the process, some of the protein material at the surface of the virus gets broken up and they come at the top of the cell wall of human cell and they act as antigen. These antigens, these protein materials at the surface of the human cell, they act as tutorial for the immune system. And over the period of time, immune system learns to identify these foreign materials. When the immune cells passes by, they identify these foreign materials that goes into the memory of the immune cell, and next time when the virus enters into the body, they are easily identified because of these antigens and antibodies are released, the virus are killed. But for the first time, this won't happen. And when the virus has replicated, it will exit the cell only to enter another cell and infect it. So this is the basic process how it goes from one cell to another cell. It has been found out that the infection begins in the throat region and the virus infects the backside of the throat, causing sore throat and dry cough, which is taken as the initial symptom of the disease. Then the virus crawls down slowly into the bronchial tubes. But recent study has shown that the infection can begin also from the outer layer of the lungs. And in this case, there are no symptoms like sore throat or dry cough. And this has been one of the reasons why COVID-19 patients could not be tested positive initially, because the test of this region was not happening. And this has resulted into the wider spread of the disease. But wherever the infection begins from, either from the throat region or the outer layer of the lungs, it comes down to the trachea and then to the bronchus, then to bronchi, then to bronchioles, and then finally into tiny air sacs called as alveoles. When infection reaches alveoles, situation becomes very, very critical and it may become fatal as well. Because of viral infection, there is inflammation. It's a normal immune response. But when there is inflammation in alveoli, then situation is critical and it can lead to fatality as well. There are two things here to understand. Because of inflammation, it will be intuitive for you to understand that the air sacs will get swallowed up. It will be difficult for alveoli to perform its function. The function of alveoli is to put oxygen into the bloodstream and take away carbon dioxide to be exhaled. So the oxygen uptaking ability of the lungs will be compromised, and in that case patient may have to be put up on ventilators. But if the inflammation persists, the oxygen level will severely decrease, and when the oxygen level severely decreases, then there will be formation of pus. The formation of pus and other body fluid may become so high in the alveolic region that even ventilator cannot support the patient and the patient will die. Now it is important to understand that many of the patients are dying because of very strong immune response and inflammation in their lungs. If this inflammation would not be there, the fatality might not be so high as it is now. The immune system may develop a response against the virus, but before that is given a chance, the inflammation is killing the patients. And in order to stop this inflammation, any anti-inflammatory drug will be of use, and so hydroxychloroquine will also be. Let us see the process of inflammation little more closely. Whenever there is a foreign body entering into our tissue, or the tissue gets damaged otherwise, or a pathogen enters into our body, there is inflammation as a natural immune response. That part of the tissue gets swelled. What happens is the cells from the immune system travel to the site, to the infected region or to the region of injury, and they release cytokines. Cytokines are basically signaling molecules, and these cytokines initiates new responses to the cells and the tissues which causes swelling. The first thing it does is to signal to the concerned tissue wherever the injury or infection is to accumulate plasma proteins. Plasma, the part of blood, contains many proteins. As you can see, they are flowing in the blood vessel. But when the infection or injury happens, the cytokines signal the tissue to start accumulating these proteins. And because of accumulation of these proteins, that's one reason as to how the swelling happens. To facilitate the accumulation of these plasma proteins, small blood vessels are signaled to get enlarged so that more and more proteins can be filtered out and accumulated into the tissue. And this enlarging of a small blood vessel also helps the leukocytes, WBC, the police force of the body, to reach to the site of injury and perform its function, either to repair the body or to kill the pathogen. So enlarging of these blood vessels helps in two ways. One is the plasma protein can reach into the site of injury or infection and helps in swelling, and the second, more leukocytes can enter into it. Cutting long story short, inflammation and swelling is the natural way of the body to allow more access to the leukocytes into the injured region, into the infected region. So inflammation is an immune response to allow the police force to come in and do its job. But there's a big but. If the WBC cell is not inept to kill the virus, then inflammation and giving them access to the region is of no use. As we have seen previously, that inflammation in alveoli can put the patient in critical condition on ventilators, and if that persists, that can actually lead to fatality. So we understand that coronavirus is a new virus. Immune system has not learned to create antibodies against this virus, and hence WBC cannot kill the virus straight away. So unnecessarily inflammation is not required in this case. because even if you give access, WBC is not going to do anything. Hence, anti-inflammatory drug is going to be helpful for a patient, suppressing down the effect of pneumonia, the infection of the lung. So all in all, two things you have to know about hydroxychloroquine. One is it is famously used as anti-malarial drug. And the second we have just learned, it is also anti-inflammatory agent. This use of this drug as anti-inflammatory drug is very old. But now, after understanding the mechanism of infection of coronavirus, it is increasingly realized it may also be of great help to treat COVID-19 patients. This article is from page number 12. Will convalescent plasma help COVID-19 patients? See, the race to develop vaccine against coronavirus is on, but that is going to take some time. Even if we have technological breakthrough, the testing will take more time and vaccine is at least an year away from us. In that case, convalescent plasma therapy, an old technology, is gaining currency. And recently, Kerala and Delhi have got approval from ICMR to start testing of convalescent plasma therapy for COVID-19 patients. To understand convalescent plasma therapy, first let's look at what plasma is. Blood plasma is the fluid part of the blood in which the blood cells are dissolved. It's the yellowish liquid component of the blood that holds up the blood cells, the RBCs, WBCs and the platelets in the form of suspension in itself. Blood is a form of suspension, as you would know, and the blood cells, RBC, WBC and platelets are suspended in the plasma. So the yellowish fluid part of the blood is blood plasma. Blood plasma makes up about 55% of the blood by volume, and the rest 45% are the blood cells. Talking of composition of blood plasma, 92% of it is water, that's why it's the fluid part, but there are other important things in it. 7% of it are vital proteins, as we have seen about 7 to 8 minutes back, that plasma proteins are used in swelling and inflammation of the tissue. So it got to have proteins. And it also has minerals, for example, salts, sugar, fats, hormones, and vitamins in it. And because of this, you will understand that it will perform some crucial functions. For example, maintenance of blood pressure. And to supply proteins for crucial functions like blood clotting, immunity, of which inflammation is a part, as we have seen some time back. And salts like sodium and potassium are passed to the muscles in the form of electrolytes, which are important for the expansion and contraction of muscles. It also helps to maintain proper pH balance in the body, which supports various cell functions. So this is basic of plasma, which you already would be knowing. Now let's talk a little bit about antibodies. In the previous discussion, we saw when the virus enters the cell for the first time, when there is no prior immunity against that virus, it spreads far and deep into the body. And when it does that, certain part of its protein, which is there on its surface, gets broken down, and that comes at the top of the cell. And these acts as antigens. Antigens are anything that triggers immune response. What happens next is, during the course of time, immune cells learn that these are foreign bodies, and they learn how to deal with them. They develop proteins that fits into it and deactivates them. So first, antibodies are developed, and these proteins which fits into antigens to deactivate them are called antibodies. So after some time, antibodies are created in the body and viruses are identified and they are deactivated and they are killed. This is how it happens for the first time. But if the virus attacks for the second time, then things won't come this far. The virus won't be able to invade the body so far and so deep. They will be identified in the initial stage and they will be deactivated and killed. So these antibodies, which have a specific shape that will target specific virus, they are the memory of the immune cell, and in the next viral attack, these antibodies are very effective in dealing with the virus. But when the viral attack is for the first time, there is no specific shaped proteins. That means there is no antibody already in the body. Antibody will be developed in the due course of time. And once they are developed, they remain in the body for a longer period of time. And in the body where they are in the blood and they are in the mucosa. In the blood, they are in the plasma basically, the liquid part of the blood, and in the mucosa layer. Mucosa layers are the thin layers covering the tissue, the cavities, the joints, mostly the thin, soft top layer of our internal organs. So this is what antibodies are. When a cell gets infected by the virus, antigens are created as we see them here. And these antigens bind with antibodies. Antibodies are specific to antigens. So one antibody will not be effective for two viruses. One antibody will be effective against only one virus. And when antibodies get attached to the antigen, it creates signals. And those signals calls other helpers. And those other helpers are the T cells and the B cells in the body. B cells helps to create more antibodies and T cells kill the virus directly. When all the viruses are dead, then the signaling stops. When the signaling stops, then the action taken by B cells and T cells are also suppressed, and that's how the immune response of the body are suppressed. So what we learn is the most important thing in fighting against virus are antibodies. And where are they? They are in the plasma of the blood and also in the mucosa layer, but not easy to get it from there. So we are focusing on the blood. Now you must already have started to got the feel of as to what convalescent plasma therapy is going to do. See, people who have recovered from COVID-19, they must have recovered because their body must have fought the battle against the virus. And how they could have done it? They could have done through antibodies. That means their blood plasma have antibodies against coronavirus, right? So that blood plasma that has antibodies against the disease is called as convalescent plasma. So now we understand convalescent plasma for COVID-19 will have antibodies against COVID-19. So the idea is that these neutralizing antibodies, which is already present in the plasma of recovered patient, when that will be extracted and infused into the blood of a current patient, then that will help the patient's immune system to fight the virus. So in convalescent plasma therapy, only the plasma part of the blood is taken. It is similar to blood transfusion and takes almost the same time, but in this case, the cells of the blood are taken from the blood and put back into the donor's body. So effectively what comes out of the donor body is plasma. Because blood cells as such are not required. Blood cells are already there in the body of the patient, but signaling is missing, and signaling comes from antibodies as we have just talked about. So if that signaling happens using the antibodies of the donor, then the immune system, the WBC of the patient is also sufficient to deal with the virus. And the benefit of this is RBC is not taken out from the body of the donor, and replenishment time, which is several weeks in case of RBC, is not there. So same donor can give plasma for every 2 weeks. As we have talked about, this is not a new technique. It was used way back in 1918 in case of Spanish flu pandemic. It was also used in 2003 for SARS, also used in Ebola in 2013. And in these two cases, it has been found to be very effective because till date there is no vaccination against SARS. And plasma therapy also has been used against measles, bacterial pneumonia. Pneumonia can be caused by virus and fungus also, and numerous other infectious diseases. It is considered to be safe. But however, there are certain issues. First and foremost, the whole technique is hinged on antibodies. But we don't know how long these antibodies are going to survive in case of COVID-19. See, antibodies against viral infection like measles is for lifelong. Once you have measles, you will never have it again. Because antibodies survive in our plasma as long as we live. But we don't know the antibody in case of COVID-19, how long that is going to survive. Suppose it does not survive for long, then the technique in that case will not be so very useful. And also for the efficacy of the technique, there has to be too many numbers of antibodies present in the plasma of the donor. And we also don't know the immune response, how that is, what is the amount of antibodies which is developed in case of a recovered patient. If that is too little, then again efficacy will be low. Although US has come up with some tests to test the amount of antibodies in the donor, but this technology has to be widespread for this technique of convalescent plasma to be successful. Then we need to have enough donors who have successfully recovered from the virus and they are also free from other pathogens. So first, people should be willing to donate, and secondly, they should be tested thoroughly for all kind of pathogens. Otherwise, what will happen, there is a risk of transfusion of other infections like HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, syphilis. Although they might have antibodies against coronavirus, but inadvertently, transfusion of other infection might happen to the patient. And there is no standardized protocol as to how often this can be used, in what amount the blood plasma can be transfused from the donor to the patient. Although recently WHO has come up with a suggestion to use the technique of convalescent plasma for COVID-19, but the nitty-gritties and the technical details have not been spelled out. This article from page number 7, RT-PCR only confirmatory test, says government, is in continuum to the discussion we have been having so far. In the previous article, we saw that for convalescent plasma therapy to work, we have to test the antibody in the donor. And for that, we need to have some rapid antibody test. The context of this article is that government has said that the reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction is the only standard for COVID-19 test, and rapid antibody test cannot replace it. See, the matter of the thing is that whenever a virus infects a cell, as we have seen previously, antigens are created, which contains the nuclear material of the virus. And over the period of time, the immune system learns to identify these antigens and develop proteins with specific shapes that would latch up to the antigen and deactivate them. And these proteins with specific shapes are called antibodies. Question is, which is generated first, antigen or antibody? The answer is antigen. The question is, how much time lag would there be between the production of antigen and antibody? It could be from few days to weeks to months, depending upon how active the immune system is. Now answer this question. If an antibody test is carried out on a patient and the test comes negative, does that mean that the patient is not infected with coronavirus? The answer obviously is no. It might be that antibodies have not been generated yet. He could be infected and antigens could already be there in his body, but the immune system is taking long to generate antibody. So now let me ask you a basic question. Which is a better test? Reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, which test antigens, or rapid antibody test, which test antibodies? The answer is pretty simple, no chocolate for this. It is obviously the reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, and that's what the government is saying. But polymerase chain reaction is an important invention, and Nobel Prize was given for this. So let's talk about this a little bit. See, transcription is a process that happens naturally in our body. DNA holds all the information regarding all the process that happens in a living organism. DNA, of course, is a long chain, and parts of it contain certain information regarding certain process, and those parts are called as gene. Not entire of DNA is gene, but many part of DNA are gene. mRNA or messenger RNA come to DNA and it copies a certain part of DNA, or it copies to say a gene of DNA, and that copying is called as transcription. It copies that part which is basically an instruction code. It takes away and uses that instruction code to create a protein or do whatsoever it wishes like, or to do whatsoever the gene is instructing to do. And this process is called as translation. This is a natural process that's happening in the body. Now, learning from this, what has happened in the PCR test, polymerase chain reaction, the same method is used in the laboratory in which DNA is copied so that enough nuclear material is generated in the laboratory for the test to be sensitive enough. Because the viral load can be low and the presence of antigen can also be low. So the presence of antigen in the sample that you have collected might be low. So to make the test effective, there has to be enough nuclear material in the sample that we have collected, and for that purpose, this polymerase chain reaction is used and more DNA materials are created in the laboratory. But however, I have been telling you since many days now that coronavirus is RNA based virus. It does not have DNA, and RNA are much shorter than DNA, and RNA cannot be translated just like DNA. So in this case, reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction is used. As you can see here, RNA is used as an intermediary to create a protein from part of DNA. So the reverse of this can also happen. DNA material can be rather created as the end product of the reaction. And that is reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction. Because polymerase chain reaction is used for DNA based pathogens. Coronavirus is RNA based virus. So reverse transcription has to be used because ultimately we require DNA, because DNA can be translated, DNA can be transcripted, RNA cannot. That's why reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction is used in this case. So just to reiterate what we have seen, the biggest advantage of polymerase chain reaction test over rapid antibody test is It tests antigens. So early infection can be detected using this test when antibodies have not been developed yet. But everything has a cost. And the cost in this case is the higher financial cost and higher time. The average time for polymerase chain reaction is 4 to 4.5 hours. And in case of rapid antibody test, it is less than 30 minutes. So if the testing has to be done on a wider scale, then we have to go for antibody testing to test the level of epidemic, because that's not simply possible by polymerase chain reaction. But polymerase chain reaction can only be the confirmatory test for the infection. There is a news on page number 1, government nod mandatory for FDI from neighboring countries. Neighboring countries for the purpose of this notification are those which share land border with India, and that essentially means China, because government nod already is mandatory for FDI from Pakistan and Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar contributes only minusculely towards FDI to India. So that leaves only China, and this notification essentially is in reference to China. COVID-19 has adversely affected many Indian firms. Their share prices are going down and they are in financial distress. The distress is expressed in the form of recent layoffs that have been happening in many firms. And hence they become vulnerable to hostile and opportunistic takeover by financial firms having deep pockets. For instance, recently Chinese central bank has bought 1.75 crore shares of HDFC Bank. And now its ownership has gone up to 1.01%. The alarm bell has been rang by many quarters that such hostile takeover can happen because of deep pockets of these Chinese companies. And to shield Indian firms from hostile takeover of Chinese firms, this notification effectively has been brought about. Primarily, there are two modes of investment: FPI, foreign portfolio investment, and FDI, foreign direct investment. According to the guidelines given by the Government of India, if the foreign investment is less than 10% in any listed Indian company, then that will be considered as portfolio investment. If that is more than 10%, then that would be considered as foreign direct investment. This is the basic difference. Apart from that, you would be aware that in foreign portfolio investment, there is no control of management of the shareholder. But in case of foreign direct investment, ownership and management goes to the investor. India has come a long way in FDI reforms. And currently, India is pursuing the path of liberal FDI regime. Because in many of the sectors, Government of India has allowed 100% FDI. For example, in agriculture and allied activities, there is 100% FDI limit in automatic route. In automatic route, you do not require permission of Government of India from any ministry or department. The investment can happen with the mutual consent of investor and the company. Similarly, in coal mining, 100% FDI limit in automatic route. In defense, 100% FDI limit. But if you have to invest more than 49%, you have to take the government route. That means permission from the ministry has to be granted. But up to 49%, you can invest under automatic route. In print media, investment limit is only 26% and that too under government route. Airports 100% automatic route. Telecom 100% up till 49% automatic route. Beyond that, government route. In single brand retail, 100% FDI limit. But beyond 49%, government approval is required. In multiple brand retail, investment limit is 51%. But there are many conditions imposed. Can you tell me those conditions? In private sector bank, FDI limit is 74% and beyond 49% government approval is required. In public sector bank, you should remember the FDI limit is only 20% and that too through government route. In insurance and pension, the FDI limit is 49% under automatic route. It might get difficult to remember all the FDI limits, but what should do the bare minimum is to remember those sectors in which FDI limit is 100%. Then for prelims examination, you should be aware of the sectors which are completely closed for FDI, which are lotteries, gambling, chit funds and nidhi companies. Trading in transferable development rights, you must remember, is prohibited under FDI. Manufacturing of cigars, cigarettes, tobaccos, tobacco substitutes, and atomic energy and railway operations. In certain sector of railway like catering, FDI is allowed, but in railway operations, it is not allowed. So as we have just seen that India has opened up to FDI investment a lot, and you can see that India has started to adopt a liberal FDI regime. But suddenly this step is in reverse direction and India has kind of put a barrier on FDI investment. The recent change, as we have already talked about, is concerning land bordering nations, which will effectively mean China. Because a citizen of Bangladesh and China or an entity incorporated in these countries can invest in India only through government route. So this restriction of government nod is already there. And also, FDI from Pakistan in no way can be allowed in sectors such as defense, space, and atomic energy. So Pakistan and Bangladesh already had this restriction, and as we have talked about, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar does not rope in enough FDI. So the only left land bordering country is China. And according to the new regime, entities from countries which share a land border with India will now be permitted to invest only under approval route. That means government permission will be required. Permission from the concerned ministry and department will have to be taken. You must also be aware that the rule has been tightened not just for new FDIs, but also for the existing FDIs. The transfer of ownership of any existing FDI with the direct or indirect beneficiary from these countries will also require government permission. As of now, the changes have been made only for FDI, but it is expected that similar notification will be brought about by SEBI making changes for the rules of FPI. Now you must do a little bit of brainstorming and think what could be the inadvertent effect of these changes. Because the notification does not differentiate between listed companies or unlisted companies, greenfield or brownfield, nature of investment, for example in industry or financial sector or a venture capital, nothing, no difference at all. This covers any and every kind of investment. And you would be aware that many of the companies like Zomato, Swiggy, Big Basket, Snapdeal, Oyo, Ola, they have major investment from Chinese venture capitalists. And in the time of stress, barrier to the incoming financial investment can be disastrous. So think about it a little bit. Tell me the benefits and perhaps some inadvertent problems that will come because of this regulation. Since most of the topics that we have done today are in small prelims pointer form, so I'm not taking up prelims summary with you today. We will straight away come to the question of the day, but I have made good questions for DNS quiz today though. So after listening to this and after solving question of the day, you can visit and solve the DNS quiz. Question of the day for yesterday was, consider the following statements about Kudumbashree. Kudumbashree is a poverty eradication and women empowerment program implemented by the State Poverty Eradication Mission of the Government of Kerala. This is a factual correct statement. Formation of Kudumbashree has helped in devolution of power at local level. This can't be but correct. A generic statement, both the statements are correct, the answer is C. Question of the day for today, consider the following statements with respect to different testing strategies related to COVID-19. The RT-PCR test, reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction test, detects the presence of antibodies in the patient to identify the infection. RT-PCR tests are effective only at the latter stage of the infection after the immune system has responded by synthesizing antibodies. Your options are 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, or neither 1 nor 2.